Now, Vancouver's Push Festival is on now. There is innovative performance art of every kind happening both in person and online this year, including a unique play called Do You Mind If I Sit Here? With us today, James Long, the director and co-artistic director of Theatre Replacement, and Marcus Youssef is the writer. So Do You Mind If I Sit Here? It's at the Russian Hall from January 26th to 29th. Hello there. How are you doing? How are you both doing?
Very good, Gloria. Hi.
Nice to have you
Hey,
here.
Gloria. Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you here. Now, James, the Russian Hall is the setting. This is an important place in real life and also in this play. So just what is the concept of this story?
Well, the basic premise, and it's got a long history because I have a studio space. Theatre Replacement has had a studio space in the Russian Hall for about 11 or 12 years. So we're deeply invested in the building. And the premise of the play is it's somewhere in the near future, and 3 planners have entered the Russian Hall for the first time in about 30 years because it has been left derelict, with the task of repurposing it for the community, and they run into a bit of a problem. And the story goes from there.
Okay. And you went through a lot of old file footage to start this as well, James?
Yeah, it started off, Marcus and I were in here working on a show called Winners and Losers that we eventually performed all over the world over the last, decade or so. And procrastinating, as we often did during that process, we found ourselves in a closet near the studio and found about 20 hours of 16 millimeter film that intrigued us immediately. And eventually we got a projector and started watching them.
Okay, so Marcus, take it from there then. How much of the footage did you watch before writing the play?
Well, we knew at that time, and this is 10 years ago, as Jamie said, that the footage was really, really interesting to us. It's so the Russian Hall in the 1950s and 60s was actually a kind of cultural outpost of the Comintern, the Communist International that was seeking to spread the word about the success of the Soviet Revolution. And so these were actually propaganda films and informational films to some extent that had been sent to the Russian diaspora in Vancouver to show people, to go, look, the revolution is succeeding, like the Soviet life is a great life. And super interesting for us to watch those in the context of 2012 or 2014 or whatever it was, knowing by that time the Soviet Union and as an idea had completely collapsed. So that was a kind of the first super interesting thing. And then I think it was Jamie who had the notion about looking at progress and the idea of progress and who wins and who loses in progress and who succeeds and who fails in progress in relationship to the hall itself, which, as he said, is a space that he and many of us in the arts community feel really, really connected to as an art center.
Oh, okay. I love this old footage as the basis. But James, in terms of transferring all of this to stage, what's happening on stage while this story unfolds?
Well, we're just figuring that out right now. We got about a week before opening, and hopefully we'll know by that point. But it's it's an austere setting for sure. The idea is that we are in the near future, and things have continued on as they are right now, which is pretty problematic when you think about the climate and the multiple changes and the pandemics and everything else that we've been facing for the last little while. So the 3 enter the space in a very scarce time with the intention of having a community engagement session, which I think a lot of us have taken part in as our city continues to change around us. And they engage the audience directly at certain parts in the play, and there's other parts of the play where it's very private conversations as they deal with a human relic inside this building that's providing a lot of complications in this idea of progress. How do you move forward and who do you leave behind? It becomes a central question.
Now, James, you're also a graduate of urban planning as well as theater. So how much did you pull from your old studies in directing this? You know, you're talking about change and progress here.
And I think this is just a continuation of my thesis project, which was all about community engagement and looking at the question of community engagement and how it impacts artists and the art they make. Just when community engagement became a very big priority for certainly the BC government around 2010, 2008. And we started having to respond to that question. How do we engage with our public beyond just making art for them? So I've taken that thesis question and now it's really wound itself into this project as an artist. And this is a term that Marcus uses with me all the time that comes from the UK and an artist named Grayson Perry. But the artist often is the shock troop of gentrification. We're the first ones in. This was a Russian people's home for 80 years. And the artists are the first wave of pushing those people out towards who knows what comes next.
Whoa, the shock troop. So, Marcus, what do you think this play that's set in the future using images from the past, what does it say about our human condition today?
Well, I'm really glad you asked me that question, Gloria, because it's actually exactly what I wanted to talk about. I think this futuristic scenario that Jamie has really devised, why I got really excited about working on it, is because as someone who's, I don't have an urban studies degree, master's, but I spend a lot of time thinking about and working in municipal politics, and and I think we share that, and I think that what happens in the play, which is that these people come to make something better for the community, and find an old person who can't function in the community anymore. They are past the ability to adapt to the changes that are occurring, and I believe that question is central to the future life of our city, which is developing so quickly because of, and in certain ways, because of the economic forces that surround us, that people are being marginalized and left behind. And I think that question is a critical one for the city. And I was so excited when Jamie came to me, because it's seeking to explore that question in an artistic way, not a polemic way or like as a newspaper article, but as actually through living, breathing characters who we interact directly with live in person, even during a pandemic.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, and I'd like to hear from each of you, but before I let you go, here we are in a pandemic. How does creating a piece of work in a pandemic impact what you create? Marcus?
Yeah, well, it's impacted impacted me pretty seriously. Last Friday, I tested positive for Omicron and began to show symptoms. So I've been home from rehearsal, trying to watch rehearsals on Zoom and respond as the co-writer on those. I don't recommend that as a cure for COVID for anyone. Watching theater on Zoom, it's definitely not gonna help you feel better. So in a really practical way, I've been distanced from this show at the most critical point for me as the co-writer. So that's something to contend with. On the upside, I would say that it's once again, and I think I've even said this to you in different contexts, Gloria, it's a testament to like the way in which we as a community are really working with each other to figure out how to move forward. And our audiences are absolutely willing. Push festival shows are almost all sold out, are willing to figure out together how we move forward in this new and hopefully temporary reality.
Well, I love to hear about the success of the ticket sales, and I'm very sorry to hear that you got COVID in the midst of this as well. And James, what do you want to weigh in on that as well? Just the effect or the impact of doing major productions like this in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just kind of formulating my director's note that I have to put on a program, and realized that each of our workshops, our major workshops, have coincided with massive events. The first one was a few weeks after George Floyd's murder. The second one was inside the heat dome when Lytton burned to the ground. The third last work period was simultaneous with the first atmospheric river. And this is all umbrellaed by the pandemic. And each of those things amounted to huge change and consideration, social consideration, all inside of the pandemic. And the one benefit of all the pivots and the changes and the reschedules and losing people inside of this process is that we get to come into a room, masked or not, and talk about it. We talk about the things that are happening to ourselves right now. And each of those pieces, each of those major transformations have found themselves inside the show in different ways. And again, not a polemic, but they've integrated it. And we've been able to respond to each of those moments as a very tiny community working on this piece. So it's been a bit of a gift.
Well, sure. Well, Marcus, we wish you well on your recovery. And thank you both. Thank you for your creativity and what you bring to the region. It's wonderful.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Gloria.